Let's close by heading one last time around the Inside Politics table. Ask our great reporters share a little something from their notebooks, help get you out ahead of the big political news just around the corner. Abby Phillip?
Well, this week we learned something really interesting about White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. He made some calls from Asia on the president's trip to the acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary Elaine Duke on the issue of protective status for Hondurans. And he pushed her to make a decision to expel, a large group of Hondurans who've been in the country for about 2 decades. What's interesting about this is that Kelly often stays on the margins of big decisions like this. And this was one of those key moments where he didn't just moderate the debate, he was involved in it in some meetings at the White House in the last couple of weeks. So another big opponent of keeping Hondurans in the United States under this status was Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So those two men are in some ways on the same page about some key immigration-related issues, and it'll be interesting to see how much further that kind of potential alliance goes between Jeff Sessions, John Kelly, especially when it comes to immigration. We know Kelly's putting his former deputy over at DHS if she's confirmed. That'll be another key lever of power for him. Evolution for the chief. Molly?
Will Mike Flynn be indicted? And if not, why not? We've known for a while that the Mueller investigation has been looking at the former national security advisor and gathering evidence. And since the Manafort indictment 2 weeks ago, a lot of people are wondering if he's the next domino to fall. And it was reported this week that they do have enough evidence to indict him if they wanted to. However, if he doesn't get indicted, that raises the possibility that there is some cooperation going on with investigators, which could definitely scare the White House as the investigation threatens to move closer to the president's inner circle.
It's a big one to keep an eye on. Michael?
Well, we've been talking about tax reform now for days, weeks. A small change, but I think a big and significant sort of political change to the House tax bill was the restoration of the adoption tax credit, which was something that a lot of conservatives, a lot of pro-life groups were sort of up in arms about when the Republicans took that out. I asked the White House, what kind of role did the White House have? Did they have a view on this tax credit? Did they push House tax writers to keep it back in? They said, what I was told was, we encouraged this idea of keeping this in. It sort of shows you what the White House has been doing behind the scenes, not publicly, making their views known on the details of tax reform, but instead sort of urging quietly, or if somebody brings up an idea that they support, just saying, yeah, that sounds good to us. It'll be interesting to see how that changes once President Trump is back in the United States and is a little more directly engaged in these tax reform talks as we go to the next week.
And watching the calendar. Margaret?
Jim Comey's back, although he was never really gone. But in the next week, I'm certainly going to be watching his Twitter feed. He's out now tweeting as himself instead of this alias of Reinhold Niebuhr, the theologian who he was hiding behind for all these months. But we saw him emerge over the weekend, of course, when President Trump suggested that Comey and Clapper and so were hacks. Comey tweeting another philosopher, religious philosopher, when he says, if you want truth to go around the world, you have to have an express train to pull it. And if you want a lie to go around the world, it will fly because it's as light as a feather. So he's about a week into his official Twitter feed now. Keep watching for more.
Shakespeare Comey on Twitter. Okay, got that. I'll close with this. Both political parties fired up their maps and modeling software after Tuesday's big election, and both see obvious improved Democratic odds now of retaking the House in 2018. Most of us, of course, don't have access to that software, so here's a good way to keep score at home. Pollsters ask what is called a generic ballot question. It goes like this. If the election were today, would you vote Democratic or Republican for Congress? Now, Republicans expect to stay on the losing side of that question throughout the next year because Congress is unpopular and because it's President Trump's first midterm election. It is the margin that matters. If the national lead for Democrats is in single digits next October, most Republican strategists think they'll lose seats but keep their House majority. If, though, the Democratic lead next fall is in low double digits, then the majority is at clear risk. Now, most strategists view 15 as the magic number, meaning if the Democratic edge hits 15 points, any remaining Speaker Ryan stationary becomes a collector's item. Our new CNN poll this week had it Democrats plus 12. That's the danger zone for the GOP, which tells you all you need to know about Nancy Pelosi's smile and Paul Ryan's tax cut urgency. We'll keep an eye on that one. That's it for Inside Politics again. Thanks for sharing your Sunday. Up next, the former Director of National Intelligence and the former CIA Director on CNN's State of the Union. Have a great Sunday.